Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into a hypothesis that just keeps popping up. The ancient astronaut theory.
It's a fascinating one, definitely persistent.
The core idea, really popularized by Erich von Däniken back in 1968 with Chariots of the Gods, is that extraterrestrials visited Earth in the past.
Right, and that they influenced early human civilizations. Maybe helped build massive structures, shared knowledge, became the basis for myths.
Left behind advanced tech, that kind of thing. We've gathered quite a bit of material, expert takes, articles to really unpack this.
It certainly captured the public imagination for decades. The central claim is that some ancient achievements, well, they seem too advanced for the time, suggesting outside help was needed. Alien help.
And it's not just something from the 60s or 70s. It resurfaces. Didn't Elon Musk tweet something about this fairly recently?
He did, yeah, back in 2020. Something like aliens built the pyramids, obviously.
Just casually throwing that out there.
Yeah, exactly. And while maybe it was partly tongue-in-cheek, it definitely caused some ripples. Archaeologists weren't thrilled.
Why specifically? I mean, beyond it maybe being inaccurate.
Well, figures like Sarah Koenig, an archaeologist, pointed out the real concern is the spread of misinformation, what they often call pseudo-archaeology.
Pseudo-archaeology. So theories that look like archaeology but lack the scientific basis.
Precisely. And statements like Musk's, coming from someone so high profile, can give these ideas a lot of weight, overshadowing the actual evidence-based work archaeologists do. Koenig mentioned the show Ancient Aliens, too, as a big popularizer.
And she took this further, didn't she, in a TED Talk, mentioning potential undertones.
Yes, in her 2021 talk, she raised a really serious point, that pseudo-archaeology, particularly the ancient astronaut flavor, can sometimes be rooted in, or at least feed into, racist and xenophobic viewpoints.
How so? What's the connection there?
The implication, often subtle, is that certain ancient peoples, usually non-European ones, couldn't possibly have achieved their incredible feats, pyramids, complex calendars, massive earthworks on their own.
Ah, so it implies they needed outside, alien help, diminishing their actual ingenuity.
Exactly. It questions their capabilities. Koenig put it quite bluntly. You don't need aliens to make archaeology interesting. The real human stories, the ingenuity, the problem-solving, that's fascinating enough.
That makes sense. It reminds me of this pattern you sometimes see where proponents of these fringe ideas position themselves as rebels, fighting against the mainstream.
That's a very common trope. Timothy Caulfield calls it the Galileo Gambit.
The Galileo Gambit. Explain that.
It's when someone promoting an unconventional theory compares themselves to Galileo, who was persecuted for challenging the established view, but was ultimately right. The implication is, they reject my ideas now, just like they rejected Galileo, therefore I must be right too.
So being an outsider is framed as a badge of honor almost.
Yes. Caulfield pointed this out regarding Graham Hancock in his series Ancient Apocalypse. Hancock seems to almost relish being outside the academic archaeological community, framing it as proof of his independence and ability to see truths that the dogmatic experts miss.
But that's a logical leap, isn't it? Just because mainstream science disagrees doesn't automatically mean the fringe idea is correct. Galileo was right based on evidence, not just because he was opposed.
Precisely. Caulfield argues it's a rhetorical tactic, not a sound argument. Scientific consensus usually exists for good reasons based on accumulated evidence and rigorous methods. While science can be wrong, rejection often just means the fringe theory lacks credible support or uses flawed methods. Science isn't monolithic either. There's tons of debate within fields.
Okay, so given this context, what is the settled view within mainstream science, archaeology, history, astronomy regarding the ancient astronaut theory?
The consensus is pretty overwhelming. It's considered pseudoscience.
Pseudoscience. Why that label specifically?
Because it generally lacks empirical, testable evidence. It relies heavily on interpreting ambiguous artifacts or texts through a pre-existing alien lens, often ignoring cultural context. It doesn't follow the scientific method of hypothesis testing and revision based on data.
So the scientific community emphasizes human ingenuity and cultural development grounded in actual findings.
Absolutely. They look for explanations within the known capabilities and context of the ancient cultures themselves, based on archaeological digs, historical records, linguistic analysis, and so on. The evidence points strongly towards human achievement, not alien intervention.
Let's maybe dig into some specific examples often used to support the theory. What about rock art? I've heard claims about petroglyphs in North America showing things they shouldn't.
Ah, yes. The Deer Valley Petroglyph Preserve in Arizona is sometimes mentioned. There was a claim that one petroglyph clearly depicted an ancient Punic sailing ship, maybe even with an Iberian Punic inscription. Very specific.
A Phoenician ship in ancient Arizona, that would be significant.
Extremely. But when archaeologists at ASU, along with honors students, took a closer look using high-resolution photos and 3D modeling, well, the convincing features weren't really there.
So the details that supposedly look like a ship and inscription were exaggerated or misinterpreted.
Exactly. They found the claims were based on drawings that enhanced certain ambiguous lines. In reality, the rock art was much less clear. In fact, previous archaeological suggestions for that particular glyph included a butterfly.
A butterfly. Okay, that's quite a difference from a Punic worship. Shows the importance of careful analysis.
It really does. Context and rigorous examination are key.
What about another classic? The Nazca lines in Peru. Those huge drawings in the desert. Von Daniken's big claim in Chariots of the Gods was
that they were an airfield.
Yeah.
Landing strips for alien spacecraft because they're so large, geometric, and best viewed from above.
You can see how someone might think that, especially coming at it with the ancient alien idea already in mind. Confirmation bias.
Very likely, yes. If you're looking for evidence of aliens, giant straight lines in a desert might seem to fit the bill. But science looked for other explanations. An early attempt was by astronomer Gerald Hawkins in '68.
Hawkins. What did he look for? Aliens.
No, he tested a different hypothesis. Astronomy. Could the lines align with stars or constellations, perhaps serving as a giant astronomical calendar?
And did they?
His computer analysis, based on the major stars visible, found no significant correlation. No clear alignment with known constellations he checked.
So not astronomical markers either. Case closed.
Not quite so simple. Hawkins' study had limitations. It focused mainly on Northern Hemisphere constellations, which isn't ideal for Peru. And it didn't necessarily consider which astronomical events or dates might have been important specifically to the Nazca people, maybe related to their agriculture or rituals or Southern Hemisphere stars.
Okay. So his negative result wasn't definitive. Did later research offer other ideas?
Yes, and it shifted focus towards cultural context and the landscape itself. Anthony Venni and his team did extensive work. They noticed similarities between the Nazca system and the later Inca-Sikh system around Cusco.
Sikh system? What's that?
A network of invisible lines, or Sikhs, radiating out from the Inca capital, connecting sacred sites, shrines, and often water sources. It organized space and ritual life.
And they found parallels at Nazca.
They did. Venni's research showed many Nazca lines also radiate out from central points, often natural hills or mounds. And interestingly, some lines, especially the large trapezoids, seem to align with the paths of underground water sources.
Water sources, so maybe connected to agriculture or water rituals in a dry region.
That became a leading hypothesis, that the lines were related to finding and managing water, crucial for survival there. It connects them to the known concerns and practices of Andean cultures rather than invoking extraterrestrials.
Makes a lot more sense within their world. Okay, another one often brought up is the Iron Pillar of Delhi.
Yes. The claim is usually that it's incredibly ancient, like 4,000 years old, hasn't rusted, and is made of some unknown alloy resistant to earthly elements.
Suggesting off-world metallurgy.
That's the implication. But again, the reality is more down to earth, though still impressive. First, it's not 4,000 years old. It dates to around 400 CE, so about 1,600 years old. Still old, but not prehistoric.
And the non-rusting part. Unknown alloy.
It is remarkably corrosion-resistant, but not perfectly rust-free. Metallurgists have studied it extensively. It's made of wrought iron with an unusually high phosphorus content.
Phosphorus. How does that help?
The high phosphorus content, combined with specific atmospheric conditions in Delhi, promotes the formation of a very thin, stable, protective passive layer, a type of rust actually called misoite. This layer seals the surface and slows down further corrosion significantly.
So it's clever ancient Indian metallurgy using the materials they had, not alien tech.
Exactly. It's a testament to the skill of ancient blacksmiths working within known chemical principles, even if they didn't understand the exact chemistry like we do today.
Fascinating. Then there's that famous image from Palenque, Mexico. The sarcophagus lid of King Pakal.
Oh yes, Pakal's lid. Ancient astronaut proponents often point to it, say, look, it's clearly a man piloting a rocket ship. You see the figure reclining, hands seemingly on controls, flames coming out the bottom.
It does look a bit like that if you squint, especially with modern eyes. But what do Mayanist scholars say?
They interpret it entirely within the rich context of Maya cosmology and beliefs about death and rebirth. It's not a rocket. It's profoundly symbolic.
Symbolic of what?
Pakal is shown at the moment of death, falling into the jaws of the underworld monster Xibalba. What looks like flames is often interpreted as the roots of the world tree, or Siva tree, which connects the underworld, the earthly realm, and the heavens.
The world tree.
Yes, a central element in Maya belief. Pakal is positioned between the underworld below and the celestial bird, representing the heavens, perched atop the tree above. His posture, the motifs around him, they all relate to the journey of the soul, kingship, and the Maya understanding of the universe's structure. It's about transition, not transportation.
So imposing a modern image of a rocket onto it completely misses the cultural meaning.
Completely. It strips away the layers of indigenous symbolism and replaces it with a modern technological analogy.
You mentioned earlier the concern about racist or xenophobic undertones in some ancient astronaut theories. Can we unpack that a bit more?
Sure. The issue, as scholars like Kernick point out, is that the theory disproportionately targets the achievements of non-European civilizations. Think about it. The pyramids of Egypt, the lines of Nazca in Peru, the statues of Easter Island, Mayan temples.
Teotihuacan, Pumapunku. Yeah, mostly not European sites.
Right. The implicit and sometimes explicit message can be that these ancient brown and black peoples couldn't possibly have developed the sophistication or marshaled the resources to build these things themselves. They must have had external help.
Whereas accomplishments in ancient Greece or Rome are generally attributed to, well, Greeks and Romans.
Exactly. There isn't a widespread popular theory that aliens helped build the Parthenon or Roman aqueducts. This selective application of the hypothesis is what raises red flags. It echoes older, explicitly racist ideas.
Like what? Is there a historical parallel?
Yes. The mound builder myth in 19th century North America is a striking example. European settlers encountered massive ancient earthwork mounds like Cahokia, instead of crediting the ancestors of the Native Americans living there.
They invented a different explanation.
They invented a story about a lost, vanished race, often imagined as white, maybe Vikings or Israelites, who built the mounds before being wiped out or driven away by the savage Native Americans.
And the purpose of that myth?
It served to delegitimize Native American claims to the land. If their ancestors didn't build these great works, maybe they weren't the original civilized inhabitants, making it easier to justify displacing them.
Wow. So the ancient astronaut theory can function similarly by attributing non-European achievements to external forces, thereby diminishing the capabilities and heritage of those cultures.
That's the argument, yes. It subtly removes agency and ingenuity from these peoples and hands it over to hypothetical aliens. It's been noted that these theories sometimes find traction in white supremacist forums online for this very reason.
That's a really disturbing connection. Beyond the potential implications, critics also focus on the methods used by proponents, right? How they handle evidence.
Absolutely. A major critique is the tendency to take artifacts, images, or texts completely out of their historical and cultural context. We saw that with Pakal's lid.
Interpreting things through a modern lens without understanding the original meaning.
Exactly. There's also often cherry-picking involved, highlighting a single ambiguous line from an ancient text that sounds like it could refer to technology, while ignoring the vast majority of the text that clearly doesn't.
Like finding a phrase about fiery chariots and saying it must be spaceships, ignoring the poetic or mythological context.
Precisely that kind of thing. And connecting completely unrelated things across different cultures and time periods simply because they look superficially similar, without any actual historical link. It's about creating a pattern by selecting convenient data points and ignoring inconvenient ones.
So it's less about following where the evidence leads and more about finding evidence to fit a predetermined conclusion.
That's a fair summary of the critique from the scientific perspective. Archaeology and history rely on careful, systematic analysis, considering all the evidence, understanding context, and building arguments step by step. Pseudoscience often starts with the answer aliens and then seeks anything that can be interpreted to support it.
There also seems to be a sort of religious or spiritual dimension that often weaves into these theories.
Yes, that's quite noticeable. Von Daniken himself basically argued that the gods of ancient myths weren't divine beings, but were actually flesh and blood extraterrestrials whose advanced technology was mistaken for miracles by primitive humans.
So the gods were astronauts.
Essentially, yes. And you see this continued in shows like Ancient Aliens, where biblical stories parting the Red Sea, the Ark of the Covenant, Sodom and Gomorrah are reinterpreted as displays of alien tech, like energy weapons or flying craft.
Replacing supernatural explanations with technological but still extraordinary explanations.
Right. And sometimes there are deeper themes, too. Ideas about the aliens' intentions. Are they benevolent creators or watchers, or perhaps malevolent manipulators? These can echo religious concepts of angels and demons, or divine intervention versus cosmic conflict.
And the idea of a future return.
That too. Some strands of the theory anticipate a future return of these sky gods, which has parallels with religious concepts like a second coming or the arrival of a messiah. It taps into similar hopes or fears about powerful external forces intervening in human destiny.
So, looking at all these characteristics, the handling of evidence, the Galileo gambit, the potential biases, the quasi-religious elements, how does this fit into the broader landscape of science versus pseudoscience?
Well, the ancient astronaut theory displays many classic hallmarks of pseudoscience. As we said, it lacks rigorous empirical testing. Claims are often vague and untestable.
Like what kind of vague claims?
Things like ancient structures show mathematical knowledge beyond their time, without specifying how it's beyond their time, or addressing evidence for sophisticated ancient mathematics. It tends to ignore or dismiss contradictory evidence, like the metallurgical explanation for the Delhi pillar or the contextual interpretation of Bakal's lid.
And it doesn't seem to have that self-correcting mechanism that science relies on.
Generally not. In science, hypotheses are constantly challenged, tested, and refined or discarded based on new evidence. Pseudoscience often clings to the core idea despite mounting counter-evidence, simply reinterpreting things to fit. There's often an appeal to mystery. Science can't explain this, therefore aliens.
Which contrasts sharply with legitimate scientific efforts to look for extraterrestrial life, doesn't it? Like SETI.
Absolutely. SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, is a recognized scientific field, but its approach is completely different. SETI uses rigorous scientific methods, mainly radio telescopes, to listen for potential artificial signals from distant star systems.
They're looking for verifiable specific evidence, not reinterpreting ancient myths.
Exactly. SETI operates on testable hypotheses, requires extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims, is open to peer review and criticism, and adheres to the scientific method. It represents the careful, skeptical, evidence-based approach to the question of extraterrestrial life, which stands in stark contrast to the speculative methods of ancient astronaut theory.
This has been a really thorough journey through the ancient astronaut hypothesis. We've looked at its origins, the core claims, specific examples often cited.
And importantly, the responses from archaeology and science, analyzing the evidence, the context, and the methods used. We also touched upon some of the underlying concerns about cultural bias.
It seems the crucial takeaway is the need for critical evaluation. When presented with extraordinary claims about the past, it's vital to ask, what is the actual evidence? Is it interpreted reliably? Does it fit within the known cultural and historical context?
Right. And to appreciate that the achievements of ancient human civilizations are often incredibly impressive in their own right, without needing to invoke extraterrestrial intervention. The depth of human ingenuity throughout history is, frankly, astounding.
This deep dive hopefully gives you, our listeners, a better toolkit for examining these kinds of claims and understanding the difference between speculation and evidence-based historical and scientific inquiry.
And perhaps it leaves you pondering just how much complexity and wonder exists in the human past we already know about, even as we continue to explore the possibility of life elsewhere in the universe through rigorous science.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.